All right. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Castbitten, a Dungeon Synth podcast, and I'm the host, Trev. And today I've got Mike, the artist behind Thanaphos, on the horn. Thanaphos is a droney, dark, ambient Dungeon Synth project from Germany. They're really cool. You just heard the track Marooned, which is from their September release, Eternal Solitude. That one really stirs up a lot of emotions in me. I've been walking around the city on chilly nights listening to it lately. It's so good. And then aside from the September release, they have an album called Sternengrab that was recently released physically on tape through Vicious Mockery Records, which is a pretty big deal, really exciting. So thanks so much, Mike, for coming on. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I'm very excited. We kind of dove in a little more than usual in the pre-show, and hearing your enthusiasm gets me excited to do the interview.
I mean, me too, because it's the first time I'm on a podcast, and so I'm pretty enthusiastic too.
Yeah, if it's all right, I kind of want to start with what you were getting into. I know it's not on the notes I sent you, but you were talking about recently becoming more confident and trying to do things like that, and it sounded like maybe you wanted to mention some of that. I don't know, has this recent saying yes to things been influenced by your music, or maybe the other way around? Are you making more music due to that personality shift?
I wouldn't say it that way. It's more like I think the music helped me a bit becoming more confident at all. Yes, that's right. And I think it's more of when I look back what I did last year with musically or something like that, and what I do now, and what our people are saying about my music or my project. Yeah, it's just sometimes it's just unreal. So and that helped me actually a lot to be more confident with all the stuff here.
Yeah, I can see that. Um I mentioned it before on the show, but to fans listening, it means so much when you tell artists that they did a good job and that you like their stuff. It really impacts them. So it sounds like you've been getting a lot of praise for what you've been putting out, right?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm some kind of musician who has been doing music for, like, I don't know, 14, 15 years or something like that, or starting in high school with a band or something. I mean, I started making music last year, so yeah, this is
Wow.
pretty a really big deal for me. Yeah.
So I noticed it's been a tight schedule. It looks like
hmm
Sternengrab came out. Am I saying that right, by the way? Sternengrab?
it's Sternengrab in German, but you
Okay.
can say it that way. Yeah.
Okay, that's like a passing grade. I was close. I think I'm going to end up speaking German after enough episodes of the podcast. So you put out Sternengrab in June,
hmm
and then in September, Eternal Solitude,
hmm
another totally great, fleshed out album. Uh, Not a ton of downtime in between, and
hmm
then you mentioned you just started music. I imagine this has been a huge part of your life this past year. Then is something you're really diving into. Is that the case?
Yeah, it has become a huge part of my life actually. I started with making the songs for Sterngrab in about I think February actually. But that's the thing about Sterngrab. I never planned this to be the Thanaphos record that you now know. All this, I mean, not all songs, but most of the songs are just were lo-fi beats I did back in February, March, April. Because that
Wow.
was the only music I was doing by the time. I was doing some lo-fi beat stuff, some chill out stuff, and it was all just 4 or 8 bars long stuff. And in a pretty short time, I extended all these short loops to whole songs, and it was showing me that I still have it in me and I still can do it. And then Eternal Solitude was coming naturally, because this was much more personal than Sterngrab was. So that was actually coming out of nowhere, I would say. um, and yeah, I know it sounds like not much time, but for me, it actually was enough time to make even more songs that I haven't really finished, or that hadn't really been fleshed out to be released. But they are coming. Not sure if I will do more this year, but of course, early next year, new stuff will coming.
I see. Yeah, and that's a good point. Even though it's a few short months, if you're really devoted to something and put in a lot of time, it's a lot of hours. So if something's a huge focus, you can still work on it a ton,
Absolutely,
in that time.
absolutely.
So I'm pretty hung up on what you just said though. You started out by making lo-fi beats.
Hmm.
How how did that come about? Was it just from the study YouTube channels, or what sparked that?
Not exactly. The thing is, I know right now only 2 or 3 people in the whole music or let's say dungeon synth community are knowing this. Last year I had a project which was called Galadur, and I ended this project in January this year actually. And I couldn't make any more music with this project. I stopped making music. I stopped maybe most of the things I'm doing because I was going through a really bad breakup with my girlfriend back then, and it was really really hard time for me, and
Oh
I
no.
couldn't do anything at that time. And the only thing after a few months was actually doing some lo-fi beats. So I got back into making music. And like I said, Sterngrab was then the album that showed me, okay, I can still do this, and I can make another project become even more bigger than my other one last year. And now I'm absolutely into making more music.
Wow. Can you talk about the transition from stuff that's very, you mentioned lo-fi beats. That's
Hmm.
it's very rhythmic. It kind
Hmm.
of it's a lot of small movements keeping your attention is what I associate with it. To what you have, which is very heavily on this dark ambient side. It's very um, it's something you need to have patience to fully appreciate.
Hmm.
Not to say that that doesn't help with other genres, but I imagine that the focus really shifted when you started making this type of music. Can you talk about that difference a little?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the whole thing about making the lo-fi beats was back then I was just looking some channels on YouTube, what is going on, and I found some YouTuber called Tatro who's doing some live streams, and he's making just lo-fi beats with Ableton, and I was
Wow.
using Ableton too, and that was the kind of thing that brought me back a bit. So I thought, oh, maybe I can do some music in that genre, or even only some beats in that genre, and that was actually what brought me back a bit into making music. And it's a real great let's say a huge transition from these lo-fi beats to the dark ambient stuff or
Yeah.
dungeons and stuff I'm doing now. But when you look at the melody itself, you can absolutely do this with, I would say, any kind of lo-fi song going on.
Yeah, I can see with your music where it would kind of blend in from that. I wouldn't have caught it at first, but when you say it, I can picture the transition, I
Mhm.
guess. So you mentioned getting into like kind of through YouTube getting into making that lo-fi, and then it sounds like you were maybe listening to more dungeon synth and dark ambient getting into the scene as you're making this. Is that the case? When did you find out about like this type of music, this dungeon synth stuff?
Um, I would have to say generally I was listening to music all my life. I grew up with my father listening to Led Zeppelin and that stuff. Then I had
Okay.
a phase listening to only some black music or dance music. Then was the time where Deftones were big for me,
Okay,
or Rage
awesome.
Against the Machine, and from
Yeah,
that I was going more into that kind of, let me say, metal stuff, or the harder music, let's say it that way.
right.
And I'm still am very interested in all kinds of music, but I think the most stuff I'm listening now to is kind of black metal or post rock or doom metal stuff, or the dungeon synth stuff, of course, and some synth wave, I would say. That's
Okay,
the
yeah.
things. But as you can see, I'm listening to a wide variety of music, and I think that's also something that I'm try to turn into my music, or some songs that I made. So the Eternal Solitude song is that's a classic post rock track.
Yeah.
Some people who know post rock will of course say, "Oh, that sounds so post rock," and for me, that's like paying tribute to bands like This Will Destroy You, which I'm a really big fan of. And yeah,
Okay.
that was my kind of thing for paying tribute to them, actually.
Wow. Yeah, I noticed your music isn't tagged as post rock, but listening to it, post rock was one of the like terms that came to mind pretty
Mhm.
quickly. Um, so it makes a ton of sense to hear that This Will Destroy You. Were there other post rock bands? I kind of hear like Caspian. I hear that
Oh
in
yeah,
in your music.
Caspian are great. I mean, Isis, of course, and
Mm-hmm.
all these bands are there. And all these bands actually brought me into the whole vinyl collection scene.
Oh.
Um, and yeah, right now I'm not really would say that I'm collecting a lot. I think this year I got about 10 vinyl records or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So not much. But that was a thing. And you asked about the Dungeon Synth bands. I think the first one I ever heard was Old Tower.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That was my starting point with this whole stuff, and then I found out some bands like the Depressive Silence and Tango
Mm-hmm.
Dream, Secret Stairways, all these kind of stuff. Um, and even though this is really different from the things I'm doing, I still think that these influence me a lot by creating the atmosphere. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's my kind of atmosphere is more like the spacey cosmic one. But they showed me a bit how you can approach some things like that.
Yeah, and I kind of want to check into that a bit. You mentioned spacey cosmic stuff. I
Mm.
seems like outer space is really important to your identity as a musician, and it seems like a reoccurring theme in your music, and not just the music itself, although with the ambient atmospheric stuff, you can definitely draw the connections. But yeah, your music identity a whole seems very influenced by that. How did that happen? Have you always been interested in space, and in what ways maybe does that impact your music creation process?
Yeah, absolutely. I know some people are especially in the metal scene, are more into this whole medieval kind of stuff. But
Right.
I'm totally a Star Wars person. So yeah, totally Star Wars, Star Trek. Of course, Dune. Not only the new movie, also the books and stuff, or the more horror side with Alien and Prometheus and yeah, stuff
Yeah.
like that. And that was something that always fascinated me. It's like the whole spacing is like freedom, like total freedom, because it seems like the universe is the biggest sandbox you can possibly think of. Anything can happen, anything is possible. You just have to travel far enough and you can find anything you want. And that's the kind of stuff that I see as yeah, it's just a lot more than the earth we're living on. It's just you
Yeah.
it's so big you can actually understand it actually.
Wow, you're getting me excited about space. You make me want to hop up onto the moon or something.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's funny because conceptually, I hear a lot of those ideas of like freedom and opportunities with the, like you said, the more like fantasy influenced stuff.
Mhm.
Those artists say that. And it seems like the ideas, I don't know, it's the same things getting people excited about this type of music, even if it's coming from a different place. So it seems like you mentioned a ton of non-musical influences that are all, Star Wars, Dune, a lot of sci-fi stuff. Um, would you say that's like an intentional pool that you're drawing from at this point? Like, not only is the sci-fi important to you, but do you kind of dive into that world when you're in a music making mood to try to keep this coherent, spacey identity?
Um, Not exactly. No, I think it's always some kind of some kind of in the back of my head when I
It's just
think
a
of
subconscious
yeah,
part of you at this
absolutely,
point.
absolutely. And
Okay,
there are
I can see
also
that.
some bands that I really liked it as doing some kind of this spacey black metal stuff. So Misa Team, Dark Space, Oranzi Pazuzu. They are absolutely great. Or even bands like Rush, they are from a totally different genre, and
Yeah.
they are doing also when you look at their careers, they have done so many different things, and it's always this kind of spacey thing about them going on. Especially if you don't know if Neil Peart really was a person, because his drumming was so awesome. Um, and so also other bands are a big inspiration for me in that way.
Okay, I can completely see that.
Mhm.
Kind of to go back a bit, I'm pretty hung up. You said that you just started music like a year ago. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, I s-
Um,
I started with I think it was April or May last year, just getting a MIDI keyboard, and back then I was using GarageBand, like I think most of
yeah,
the artists.
yeah. That's how I got my start with that type of
Yeah,
stuff.
and that's I was doing some, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs. They are, I don't even know how they sounded like, or how would I describe them. It's more of a electronic dance stuff or synth wavy stuff. Let me tell it that
Yeah,
way. Um, but when I wanted to make music that I really would like to listen to, I think, or I thought, GarageBand was not the best option for me. So I went into Ableton that I got with my MIDI keyboard back then, and that actually was a big thing for me, because now I totally try to understand how you can actually make songs, make progressions, and I had said I never did or have a musical background, so this was totally new for me, and it
yeah.
was all learning by doing, or just try out things, maybe put it in the trash because it sounds like it's nothing you ever want to listen to again. But yeah, I think I improved really, really fast. And
Yeah, I think
it
so.
Yeah, and after, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months, I actually, the first instrument I bought was the Korg M1, the digital version,
Oh, nice.
and this was a classic, and it still is. And I think this was used on my first project for almost every song.
Really.
And I still use it sometimes with Thanaphos now. And yeah, this showed me, like, it's you're not you not have to you or no, let me put it in another way.
Hmm.
um you don't need to be an expert to make good sounding music.
Right. I
No.
totally agree.
Yeah.
Can I kind of want to get more into detail though. So
Hmm.
if so you went from kind of, level 0, from no experience with music, with making music, to having really like fleshed out albums in a few months, if you're thinking of this first one that you made. Can you talk about specifically, like, what did you try to learn first, or what, from that perspective of coming from a very, very bare background, what did you feel like were some of the most important steps, or some moments, like some aha moments where something clicked and really helped you out with your music?
I think the most important part always was, like, I want to make music that I want to listen to, or I like to listen to. And that was something that was really important for me, and still is.
I
Um,
see.
and when you start with something like that, I think you don't need any musical theory background or something like that. Just play around, just browse through presents, and when you
Hmm.
have something that sounds okay to your ears. Maybe it's wrong in a theoretical musical way, but when you listen to it and it sounds okay for you, I think it can't be bad. And that was
Yeah.
always the thing I tried, trying to find sounds that build a thick atmosphere, trying to build sounds that work together. Yeah, that is actually the thing I did when I begin with songs or begin ideas. Um, just fire up any instrument you like and try out sounds. And when you get a sound that's actually works for you, the the making the melody isn't or actually for me it isn't really the hard part anymore. It's the
You
hardest
just
part
follow
is to
your ear
find the
once
sound
you
you
have it.
want. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. To you, do you feel like you're drawn to these ambient music? It's very texture focused. It's about getting sounds that blend
Hmm.
well together and get soupy and have a nice atmosphere. Do you feel like this background that you have has made you lean into that music more because you can get a really strong grasp on that texture and tone and have a lot of fun with that? Or is that just something that you've always been drawn to?
I think I've been always been drawn to that kind of music or that kind of
Okay.
soundscapes, I would say, and that's the thing that I found so pleasing in post rock. It's the songs are sometimes 12 to 40 minutes long, and it's still
Yeah.
for me it's not boring. It's like our society is so fast moving today. You can order things online and you receive them on the same day, and stuff like that. And then you got these ambient soundscapes that are 20 minutes long, and it feels like the clock has stopped. And that's really the thing that I am looking for in such a fast moving society now. It's like when you see music you can on the digital streaming services, you can listen to anything at any time now. But when you're only listening to like vinyl or tapes, it's just you have to buy the tape, you have to put it in your cassette player and everything. um, it's just sometimes it's just good to take a step back and don't try to move even faster. Sometimes it's just a bit better to slow down and yeah, to calm down a bit, and that's what I'm always been attracted to when you look at music.
Wow, that is so emotionally impactful to hear all that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was really well said. I love the way that you think about that. And something interesting to me is that you're 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 really connecting like the physical the copies, the vinyl and the tape with like restricting your choices in a good way and committing to a listening experience versus how casual it can be. If you're just streaming something, you can pause it and move on. I don't know. I find that interesting that you would point that out. I really appreciate it. And that's something that I like about vinyl as well, and hopefully soon tapes as I start to accumulate them. A question on tapes. Uh, so so we mentioned earlier you had this tape out on Vicious Mockery, and it seems like your other album it also had tape releases, although it's all sold out now. Tape is known to kind of color the sounds and affect textures a little bit. As
Mhm.
someone that pays so much attention to like the tonal qualities of your soundscape, what's it like listening to it on another format that kind of colors it in its own way? Is that exciting? Is that a little does it make you nervous? I don't know. How is that?
No, not nervous, but it's right that it sounds different, and I think it sounds a lot different on tape. Um,
Really?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, with the things I said, making some lo-fi beats and stuff. I was also using these lo-fi plugins to make you sound lo-fi.
Right.
But the truth is, all you have to do is record your music, put it on tape, and then re-record it, and you have the most beautiful lo-fi sound you can possibly think of. And yeah, the I produced the tapes myself, or the let me put it that way, the first issue of Sterngrab I recorded on my tape player here.
Really?
Yeah, it's I the Sterngrab and also Eternal Solitude. It was all done by myself.
Wow.
Um, Also with this kind of special additions to these tapes. I think it's for me it's all having all the let me when I would I say control, I don't know, this sounds so this sounds bad in a
Control
way.
makes sense.
But
No, no, no.
okay. I think I look at my project as a whole. So you have the music on one side, you have the physical stuff on one side, and I also try to make some videos in the future. So it's like on all these things, and I love to do this all by myself. So when I want to make something, I try to do it in the best possible way I can. And I think I'm pretty happy with how these private tapes came out. And yeah, like you said, they are all sold out now. So happily, Vicious Mockery
Yeah.
remade them. Yeah.
Did Vicious Mockery, did that release come out on their end, or did you also dub those yourself?
No, they're actually pro tapes now. I think it's the first
Okay.
batch that they have done
Wow.
completely pro. And yeah, shout out to Sam from Vicious Mockery here. He's such a great guy. I love talking to him. And I actually know him back last year when I was doing Galadur. We also talked a bit, and he was one of the guys who already know that I'm that, or let me put it that way, who Thanaphos is. So he know that this was my project.
I
Um,
see.
and from the start, he said, "Yeah, when you have some cool music, why not make a tape release?" And I was at first, I don't know, and even now, I think I have totally had could have said to him, "Yeah, let's make it," but I just wanted to make this little release from myself, this kind of special edition that hasn't been done by a company, that has been done all by myself. And I think I will also do this on future releases, even though some label will release them in a wider release
Hmm.
with more copies. But I think I will make 5 to 10 copies of my stuff also on future releases.
Oh, that's really nice. I think that sticking with that is a super fun idea. When you make those tape releases yourself, do you run them through once and stick with it, or do you tweak the master a little bit? Do you just take the songs as they are and put them through? What is that like? How much? I guess what I'm thinking is, how much do you try to control what happens when it comes to tape, and how much do you just let the format do what it does to the sound and stick with it?
I think the first tape is always the hardest to get right,
Mm.
because yeah, I try to tweak the sound a bit. Maybe when they're too less low end, I try to tweak this, and that can be very stressful at the end. So I'm always try to keep the tape releases a little bit after the album release, so I have more time to make this. Um, so yeah, I tried, or let me put it another way. Um, the tape that I did with Eternal Solitude now, um, I think I did like 4 times overdub my own personal copy of it
Really?
just to make it sound right. Yeah, and then listening to the whole A side 40 minutes, whole B side 40 minutes, maybe listening to
Wow.
it twice if I have overheard something in it. And yeah, I tried. I don't know. I can't achieve it, but I try to make it as good as I can, or a little bit perfect. Let me say it that way.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you
Um,
mean.
yeah. So I try
I
to look
I
after the quality, even if it's a total DIY release.
Yeah, I don't know if listeners always know how many times artists
Oh
re-listen to
yeah.
their stuff to try to tweak and listen and tweak and listen and go back and change things to get it perfect. Uh, yeah, that's a funny thing about it. Sometimes you just have to go to bed and save it, I think, because you get so tainted by listening to it over and over. You can't
Absolutely.
trust yourself.
Absolutely.
Um, Something I want to step back with, kind of from what you were saying earlier about having so many options for music you can listen to with streaming. I think a similar thing is, especially recording with MIDI and with VSTs, you have so many options for what types of sounds you have. And to you, the sounds that you're including are really important. How do you select those? Do you put any limitations on what you can use, or do you have something in mind? Do you just tweak knobs until you get something you like? How does that happen?
I think I always starting with browsing through the presents. Just try different things. But sometimes I know that I want a particular sound, and I'm most of the time now I'm using the Arturia V collection stuff. And
Okay.
you can change, or you can choose from different synthesizers from the start. And so sometimes I know, okay, I want a sound that's more like a digital one. Then I know, okay, that I'm gonna use that one. Or when I want something more analogy, I'm going for this
Mm-hmm.
Korg M1 stuff. Yeah. But most of the stuff now I'm doing is with the Arturia Pigments, actually. That is really, really great. I love working with this. And I think this is the first plugin that I dive that I dive deep into.
Yeah.
It got a sequencer built into it. You can tweak around. You can put LFOs on everything. It's crazy what you can
Oh,
do with it.
I think there's a lot of value to that because there's you can run through so many different different VSTs and plugins, but spending a lot of time with one and developing a close relationship with how it works helps you access sounds really easily, I think.
Absolutely. And sometimes limitation is key when you make
Yeah,
music.
yeah, I totally
It's
agree.
all those things you can do sometimes are killing your stuff, and when you haven't even
Yeah.
started. So sometimes it's really great to have a limitation and to say, don't know, maybe something monophonically, and you just start and do it. It can be better than having with so many options. So sometimes limitations are actually the better thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier you were using Ableton. Is that still the case, or do you use something else now?
No, I'm absolutely using Ableton.
Great. What do you like about it?
I think it's you have these different views. So you have the arrangement view and the session view. Most of the time, I'm working in the arrangement view, just doing a loop and starting from there. But you also have this session view where you can just select your clips and start them with a launch pad or something like that. And you can do really cool things with it. And even that it's a real complex program, I think the start is relatively easy with it. At least for
Wow,
me. I think when you start with GarageBand, the transition isn't that hard to Ableton.
I can see that. Yeah. I wasn't aware of that session view, so I was just googling
Mhm.
some pictures of it. It's pretty interesting. Has have you added anything physical since the MIDI controller, or is it still all MIDI through the digital synthesizers, things like that?
No, it's not all MIDI. I last year I got me a little Korg Volca Keys synthesizer.
Oh,
That is
cool.
pretty cool
The
to
vocal you said?
yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
It's a pretty cool small synthesizer, pure analog. And when you hear it without any effect going on, it sounds as a little thin or not that great. But when you put an effect to it, it's getting huge, and that's
I've heard that Volca. Yeah,
yeah,
I've heard that it can sound really big and really nice in the mix.
absolutely, yes. And this year I got a Korg Minilog XD.
Oh, really? A physical one?
Yeah, a physical one,
Wow.
because I just wanted to learn more about this whole synthesis thing, what you can do with it, what are the
Yeah.
knobs doing, what is this attack, sustain, decay, release stuff doing. And I thought that the best option to learn stuff like that is to have an actually synthesizer right before you. And yeah, that is the case. So everyone who is trying to start with this, so such an hardware synthesizer really can help you with all that.
I can totally imagine that. Just having the knobs in front of you and being able to play with them and learning by doing, learning by exposure to it. That makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like getting a handle on the synthesis and on how to change sounds? Do you feel like that's one of the ways that you've improved the most throughout this year, and maybe even between Staring and Grab to Eternal Solitude?
Yeah, I think so. It's I think the more I dive into these stuff, the more I can make the music that is in my head on the in Ableton. Um, so this helped me a lot. Yeah. Um, Last year when I started, it was sometimes, like Bob Ross said, happy little accidents, and he was absolutely right. And this
Right.
still happens, but it's great to know what you're doing and to know, okay, I want that sound. How can I do this? And this is a great feeling. And all this, it's not. Sometimes it's this whole thing with making music is not just about, or at least for me, making music. It's also how mixing and stuff like mastering. And there's so
Yeah.
much stuff going on, and so much stuff that you can learn if you're interested in this. It's not only playing a keyboard, it's so much more. And this has become, yeah, a huge hobby for me now.
Yeah, it gets that improvement gets addicting, just
Yeah.
like a sport or a
Yeah.
video game or something. You like to get better at it. There's so much to get better at with music, and I found that there's very different places to come from mentally. So like some point I might be really excited writing music, but if my brain's too fried to write music, I can mix something that I've already written, and that's
Hmm.
kind of tickling a whole different part, and there's always something to improve at. There's always something
Yeah.
fun to work on.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Yeah.
right. Sometimes I just start making music, and yeah, on the next day I open the song again and think, yeah, it sounds really great. I think I should do a song with this. And yeah, that's how the
Yeah.
song still is. And that's also it's a great problem that you start a song, or start a beat, and you have this beginning, and the beginning isn't the hard part, at least for me. The hard part is to make a real song out of it, and to make it sound right, to mix this right, to put the
Right.
effects on, and all this stuff. That is the real hard part, I think.
You mentioned mixing and mastering. Those those feel like a little more abstract concepts to get into early on. What was that like learning about maybe EQ, things like that, as someone who had just recently started music? Was that difficult at first?
It was, and it still is difficult, because I think the sound that I like isn't really the sound that anyone would do who's mixing or mastering this stuff properly.
I see.
I'm really the kind of person who likes to have a bassy sound, to feel the kick,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And when you look how a song should be mastered, or should be mixed, it's really different from the things I, yeah, would normally do. So this is pretty hard actually, but
Yeah.
I like listening, or watching videos, some people when they are doing this, and learning, just learning from this stuff. I don't think that I ever have the approach to make my, or to make the Thanaphos sound some kind of the perfect mixed and mastered sound. But it's cool to have all these different tools to pick from when you want to make something sound that way, or this way.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit? And this is really getting into the nitty gritty, but I think fans like it. Can you talk a bit about what your mastering chain generally looks like? Um, what's important to you there? What do you like to do as kind of an end step?
I think with Sterngrab isn't actually any mastering.
Oh wow.
I I thought about remastering it with my little knowledge now, but I haven't done it. Um, the mastering chain isn't all that complicated or yeah abstract right now. It's just I fire up Ozone in yeah, there's some kind of automatic stuff you can do. That is, the program
Okay.
is actually listening to the song and gives you some advices that you could use.
Oh,
And
that's
from that,
awesome.
yeah, and from that, I go on and just tweak the stuff when until it's yeah. I say, okay, that's the sound I want, or that's the you can also make stuff like put it in a more stereo wide or something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's the stuff that I'm doing after the whole song is done. But Eternal Solitude was the first album or the first songs that I actually used some techniques in that way.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a really cool progression to see and to experience as the artist, I imagine. I noticed as I'm going from first LP to second LP, the same thing. Just being more conscious with decisions, using more tools, things like that. It's cool. Like you were saying, there's a lot of ways to improve, and that's one of the big ones. I kind of so we got really into the specifics there about sounds and songs. I want to step back and look big picture. So to me, an ambient music maybe pulls at the heartstrings a lot, but I associate a lot of emotions with your music. When you're writing a song, do you have an emotion that you want to try to access, or is it something that just you discover and it comes along the way, or is it something else? What's the plan there?
When I'm really looking for make music for Thanaphos, it's not only the emotions, it's also like take your time, put the lights out, light up some candles, shut down everything that you can distract you, put your phone away. That's so the basic I start from. And then yeah, I would say it's a lot of my personal emotions or things I went through, especially with Eternal Solitude, which was on some. It was on one hand, it was the easiest album I could ever think of, and on the other hand, it was maybe the hardest thing that I'd ever did. So yeah, it's like I said, I think the music or this project actually is really personal, um, because it's like I was going through some really bad stuff this year, and
Right.
yeah, I still am. But this was like some kind of therapy for me,
Ah,
to let out these emotions or to make some good out of bad things that happen to you. This is some really great stuff for me, or for me becoming a better person, or to relearn making stuff on your own or something like that. So yeah, it's I would say 100% about emotions and my personal stuff. And I think that's some kind of difference between what other musicians are doing with their projects. I think.
right.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a little heavy, and it's really inspiring and
Yeah.
insightful, and I hope that the the success of the music can reassure you that those emotions are being captured and being passed along, and people appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I got so many messages. I got so many comments. There's
Really?
so many people saying, "Oh, I really like your stuff." I got from a work colleague is always saying he's listening to this song while he's studying, and this is this is really I know it's a really great thing, because that's the same when people are saying, "Oh, I like to listen to your podcast when I'm going to sleep." At first, you think, "Why would that's not good?
Yeah.
That's not a good thing." But when you think about it, it's actually the greatest thing that these people can say to you in that way.
Yeah, it makes them comfortable. It brings
Absolutely.
them happiness. That's a really good point. I think with some of the ambient stuff, people can get offended at that because they hear it often and they think, no, it shouldn't be to sleep to. I work so hard on it, and I really like your take there. I like your
Yeah.
opinion that it just shows how much they like it, how much it slips into their mind, and it makes them comfortable. Well, that's the bottom of my notes. I feel like we just squeezed out so much emotion so quickly. I'm so happy to have had you on here. Do you have anything else that you were hoping to cover?
Oh man, it was a pleasure to be here in my first podcast. I was really nervous at the beginning, but I think it was pretty good. So yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me here, and yeah, thank you. Just want to say thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so happy that you came on. Thanks so much. Um, so I know that you're thanaphos.bandcamp.com and then Vicious Mockery. I think they're Vicious Mockery
Yes.
Records.bandcamp.com. They've got your tapes now. Do you have anything else that you'd like to plug?
Right now, not really. The only thing I can say is that in January, I think this is actually announced. I'm making a split with Rodian. That is
Oh, wonderful.
the thing that is coming next from me. And yeah, let's see what happens from there.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. This was lovely.
Thank you very much.
All right. Take care. All right, friends. That was such a nice chat with our friend Mike from Thanaphos. That's the first artist of the more ambient side of things that we've had on here, and I was just bursting with questions, trying to figure out what goes on behind the scenes there. So I'm so glad that they were able to come on and give us the rundown on their music, as well as on their personal lives and the ideas that they have as they're making things. I feel like we got a lot of really good, compelling conversation there. So you can listen to their music at thanaphos.bandcamp.com, and you can also snag their Sternengrab tapes from Vicious Mockery, which I wish I could. I wish I lived close enough to grab them because they seem really nice. So be sure to check them out, give them a listen, maybe shoot them a message, tell them how much they mean to you, how good their music is. 'Cause, yeah, they've got a really good thing going. Then, as always, you can keep up with all of the Trev news at Castbitten_ on Instagram, or just Castbitten on YouTube and on Bandcamp. And you can also stream my music as well as this podcast wherever you would normally stream all those things. We've still got t-shirts. Check those dudes out. They look really good. You can get them at castbitten.bandcamp.com/merch, or just get in touch with me. We'll figure something out. All right, friends. Next couple interviews going to be really cool. I don't want to spill the beans, but I'm psyched about them as well. It's been another great one. This episode was a lot of fun to record. Thanks again to Mike for hopping on. So, take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. Get out of here.